Oh my goodness. Oh, might have to put my teeth in for this. Yeah. Gonna do a story. Got an elderly lady that's been writing a story about her life. And I want to share it because it's valuable. Valuable, yeah. She was the beginning of the oldest age to experience television. Yeah. So, let me open up my browser here so I can monitor who's chatting with me. Writing a story about her life. Mute. Okay, I got one eyeball peeking at me. That's probably Krug in jail. Oh, it's Jacob. Oh, man, good to see you, Jacob. Got a special story I want to share. My mother-in-law's been writing a story about her life. And I have it here. I suggested it to her as a way of escaping the family drama so that she could find a peaceful place in her mind and take some time to reflect on her past and put things down in paper that might be important for the family to know about her story. And it's very dear. So she's been doing that, and I want to share it and see if I can get any feedback from anybody. Oh, the haircut. Yeah, I just got my haircut. I gave the lady $50. It was 30 for the hat and the beard, and then I tossed her a 20 because those people go to school for that stuff, and you know, they really depend on a tip from, and it's nice to have a relationship with a barber rather than willy-nilly having several different people cut your hair all the time. Just get to know one barber, and it's good for the community. And I had a great time. This place called the Black Sheep here in Toledo. They're great people. So, yeah, Riley. So, oh, let me put my storytime hat on. There we go. Now, this is my life, the life of a farm girl. I was born Juanita Joyce Brown on June 6th, 1936. I was born to Phyllis and Merle Brown at home near Defiance, Ohio in Washington Township, a very rural area of farms. I never found out why my mother picked Juanita, but her father didn't like it, so I was always Joyce. I was 85 years old when one of my cousins found out my name was Juanita. Others in the family knew because they worked with me. They were confused at work as to who was Juanita Dow. Those are the details, but not the story. I can remember things that happened at a very young age, but memories are starting to fade. So I thought it was time to get things down on paper so my grandchildren will know of my life. My father was a farmer. Every time we farmed for someone, we moved. The house must have been part of the agreement. When I was 2, my Uncle Leo came home to visit. We played with bottles. My mom saved several different sizes of bottles because we couldn't afford dolls. My brother Paul was born in November 1938. He was the number 2 child. And you got some pictures here of her back in the day. And there she is as a baby. I used to go coon hunting with Dad. I also husked corn by hand. I wondered how long it took to fill a wagon. We used to raise soup beans. Mom would go around the neighborhood selling them for 15 cents a pound. We used to hook the farm trailer onto the tractor and go trick-or-treating around the neighborhood. I worked in the school cafeteria and got free lunch as Mom had no money for lunch. living in Toledo, and the birds are all, I just did a video and posted it. I got 2 birds out in the aviary in the new loft right now. At 10 or 11, we made hay by hand. We laid a sling onto the wagon. When it was full, another sling was put down. When we got to the barn, we had to pull the sling to the mow. We never had time to play except when my uncle came over with the kids. We'd go to stop and play for a while. When I was in 5th grade, I had an ear infection. My aunt took me to an ear doctor 50 miles away. It was the closest one at the time. They didn't help. I laid on 2 chairs with a warm rag on my ear by the old cook stove. I failed that year because I didn't go to school much. I was still getting the razor strap at 13 years old. I'd get a whipping for all of us. This was because I was the oldest and I was supposed to keep everybody in line. God, I identify with this so much. When I was 12, I drove a 36 Chevy without any brakes 10 miles to pick tomatoes. 14 cents per hamper. I could pick 100 hampers a day. I also hoed corn for 50 cents a row. Some weeds were as tall as I was. Some rows were a mile long. My cousin recently reminded me of the time I was hoeing tomatoes. I was out hoeing when the crop duster came over. I guess I was running for my life. Must have looked quite funny. I made $300 that season. When I couldn't have the car, I rode my bike. I still had to milk the cows when I got home. The money I made was used to buy clothes. That is the first time I had any clothes of my own. I also bought a pair of roller skates. I became a good skater. I could do all the dance steps and waltzes. After I did the chores, I could afford the 50 cents to go skating. No extra for drinks, food, or anything. One week Dad would take us, and the next week the neighbor would. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, I was a majorette. I don't know where Mom got the $7 for white marching boots. I also played the cymbals. I bought a guitar with my money. I never learned how to play it though. I played the piano. That was the year I got 100 on my grade card. No one said that it was great. The old workhorse didn't need to know anything. One aunt thought it was great. Obviously, she was my favorite aunt. I went to church camp one year. That was fun. I was 13 when Mom and baby number 7, Darlene, was born. We were all upstairs during the birth. At 14, we got water and a bathroom in the house. We found 2 baby coon. The mother must have died. We took them in the house and I fed them. When they got big enough, we put them in a cage outdoors, but their hands could open the cage and they got out. We'd asked if they'd keep coming back and we kept putting food and water out for them. After a while, they quit coming back. Someone must have kept them. This somehow's out of arrangement, but it's okay. When I was 9, we changed from horses to tractors, so I drove an F-14 with an extended clutch. This is also the year electricity came down the road. Before that, we hand pumped water for the animals. We had a pipe run into the barn to fill the tank. We used to play in that water. That was also the year my sister Helen was born. She was number 5. She was born at the house. Babies were all born at home during that time. I stayed with Grandma and Grandpa. We all did. Dad was not very good to the animals. He would beat the cows until they would drop to their knees. I never understood why. The cows were our livelihood, so I would go talk to the chickens. We had one cow that would come up to let us know that the cows got out of the fenced area. Jamie was her name. She was a black and white Holstein. We didn't have any riding horses, so Polly would ride a cow. Her name was Brownie. We had a field across the creek. Sometimes it was used for pasture. I was always afraid to go after the cows when they were there because the neighbor had a bull. That's where the line fence was. I was always afraid that he would tear it down and get after me. I was 9 or 10 at the time. We couldn't afford fences, so we would take cows to the nice patch of grass. We had to sit back there all day to keep the cows in that patch. I had all the kids except for the baby. I wonder what we did all day. We had nothing to eat or drink. One day they got out of their patch. Dad was working in the next field. He saw the cows loose. When I came to the house, he got after me with a butcher knife. When I was 11, baby number 6 was born. Charlene was the first one that I took care of when she was born. She also broke the girl-boy trend, although she was a tomboy growing up. It was my job to take care of her and Mom as well as the other kids. I had to take a 2- and 4-year-old on the tractor with me. I was lucky because I was farming for the neighbor. He had a John Deere and it had fenders over the tires so the kids could sit on them. I don't know what I would have done with them on the F-14. When I was 16, Mom had baby number 8 and last Bruce. He was the only one born in the hospital, which is good because he was huge. I quit school at 16. The teacher said make up a question and answer it. I thought that was the dumbest thing I ever heard of. I never went back. Dad and I was docking sugar beets. Sugar was rationed back then. If you grew sugar beets, you got more sugar. Anyway, this family came from town and wanted to know if I would work for them. They had a grocery store, a restaurant, and 3 girls. I did. I worked at both the restaurant and grocery store, as well as watching the girls. I lived with them and made $25 a week for 6.5 days' work. Mom would come and get me on Sunday afternoon. That's where I learned to do grill work. I met my first boyfriend in the restaurant. We got engaged. He was a semi-driver. He was working on his truck when somebody hit and killed him. Met my second one at a skating rink. He was a farmer and a Christian. That is all we did was church stuff. We got engaged. Going back in time when I was milking cows, feeding chickens and pigs, I would dream of traveling. Then one night at the skating rink, this Air Force guy's there. I'd never seen him before, so I asked him to skate. He was home on leave, so we dated while he was home. He was stationed in Othello, Washington. I finally had enough money saved for a down payment on a car, 47 Chevy. So I quit the family and I went to work in a restaurant for 75 cents an hour. I worked so many years for $27.50 a week. Dick wrote a letter and said he was going to Korea. Could we get married before he left? I broke up with Farmer Boy. My boss at the restaurant would not let me off to get married, so I quit. After he left, I lived with his parents. I went to work at the restaurant there. In the winter, I always rented a room in town. I did not like driving the back roads. It was $5 a week to rent a room. Dick was in Korea for 1.5 years. I saved $3,000. The bank did not want me to take it out. We bought a 55 Chevy for $2,800. Dick was going to be stationed in Spokane, Washington. We had a little money left over for a TV. We had nothing, just what we could carry in the car. I sat around for about 3 months. I'd had enough of that, so I applied to be a car hop. About 20 people applied. They hired me. I couldn't figure that out. A military wife didn't know how long I would be there. It paid $1 an hour. I hopped car at 20 degrees below zero. I also worked at a truck stop from 6 to 2 and car hopped from 6 to 2 p.m. and car hopped from 6 to 2 a.m. I don't know when I slept. We only had one car, so I rode the bus, and usually the sheriff took me home. Very nice of them. April of '57, my husband got sent to Saudi Arabia. On the way home, we drove through Montana. We went through one of them mountain roads. Had to plow snow to the radiation. No signs that said the road was closed. When we got to the other side, people were not happy that we went through there. We were just kids. We didn't know any better. We could have frozen up there, and we'd never let anyone know when we were coming home. So the reason we never let them know we were coming home was because Dick always liked to jump in bed with his parents. It was a wonder they didn't have a heart attack. Thinking we were in Washington State, there he is, jumping in bed with them. He left from Charleston, South Carolina, so I took him down there. I also took my dad and his mom along. We thought he was leaving, so we came back home, but he did not ship out as planned, so I took a Greyhound and went back. That was when the black and white people were separated. That was all new to me. Anyway, while we were there, we met another guy going overseas also. He had a wife and 5 kids. When the guys left, I rode back with her to help with the kids. We stopped at Myrtle Beach. That is the first time I saw the ocean. When we went through Washington, D.C., we then went to Washington, D.C. She was from Scranton, Pennsylvania. After we got to her place, I took a Greyhound back home. When I got home, I looked up the people where I used to work. They were no longer there. They now ran the country club, so I worked there till the season ended. Then I came home to my parents. I got a job at a truck stop for 15 cents an hour. I stayed there until he came home. Then we went to Peoria, Illinois, only 8 hours away from home. He was stationed with a guy in Arabia who lived in Peoria. We met his parents and we all became good friends. They trusted us like family. I got a waitress job. Sometimes I didn't have a car, so I walked 3 miles to work. Ended up becoming friends with the boss's son and family. Next was Wichita Falls, Texas. He was going to diesel mechanic school. He had been a ham radio operator and radar technician. When he was in cargo, he landed a plane by LA by ham radio. The U.S. Air Force kept him changing fields. I got a car hop job for 50 cents an hour. I could walk to work because we lived just down the road. We had a 33-foot house trailer that we pulled ourselves. Now campers are bigger than that. When he got out of school, he was sent to Germany. He left in January 1960. After he left, I went back to the truck stop where I had worked before. It was 6 months before I could go to Germany. I worked till I left to go. Every time he went somewhere, I went to the last job I had. They would always make an opening for me. Thankful for that. Dad took me to New York City. I was going over to Germany on a ship. We stayed all night in Times Square Hotel, $4 a night. This was June 1960. Took 7 days to get there. While in New York City, we cruised around Staten Island and rode the subway. We went to the top of the Empire State Building. I left from Pier 97 and landed in Cuxhaven, Germany. Zack met me there and began my German life. We lived in a little village and no one spoke English and I didn't speak German. Their houses and barns are built together. Animals and everything live in the village. When we got to Germany, we got a 41 double Dutch Volkswagen. I took my German driver's license in that. I took my roller skates to Germany. I rode an army bus 3 hours to go skating. Then I had to take a German train home. I was always afraid of getting off at the wrong place. We were only 10 miles from East-West German border. They were enemies back then. 1 month we had to go on an escape route in case they decided to attack. Finally, I met some people that lived near the skating rink, so I stayed with them overnight and took the army bus back the next day. Then I had to take a bus from the train station to home. Hotsholmen was the name of our village. $40 a month for rent. Kitchen and living room together with a separate bedroom and bathroom down the hall. I met 2 young girls who spoke English. One was real pretty. She looked like Elizabeth Taylor. The other was a short little girl that they called Scooter. We would go out together sometimes. President Kennedy said dependents could work overseas. So we moved to Casseltown. It was closer to the base. That apartment has a bathroom, living room, and bedroom with curtains in between. The kitchen was down the hall. I applied for a job at the PX. I had to go back quite a few times before he decided to hire me. I guess he wasn't used to having Americans. I worked the cigarette counter. Lucky Strikes were $1.20 a carton. Cigarettes were rationed at that time. The guys came from outposts and I had to stick a stamp on their folder. They had their meetings in German, so I had to learn German language, all for 75 cents an hour. There were only 10 American women on base. 3 of us worked. I worked the PX for about a year. Then I went to the NCO club for $1 an hour plus tips. Both places I worked for picked me up to go to work. I thought that was neat. We ran around with this couple. They had a little girl in '61. We took trips together. They had a little Simca car. We could hardly make it over the mountains. We went to Innsbruck, Austria, Niersberg Sea. King Ludwig drowned there in the Black Forest. We took a cable car up Zispers Heights, Nichten, Germany. My brother Paul was in the army stationed in Ruberg. We stopped to see him for a while. And there's a picture of the cars. While I was working PX, we ordered an American car, 1962 Rambler convertible. In July '62, we took our own trip. We went through the Alps, stopped at the Isle of Capri. That is off the Italian coast before you get to Vienna. We went through Italy, went to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We stayed at nice France and French Riviera. I washed my pots in the Mediterranean Sea. Some pots were sucked out with the waves. I had to chase them down. We then went to west to Barcelona, Spain. Hotel was $5 a night, which included meals and anything in the fridge. We met a guy from Canary Island. We all went to the bullfight together. Before that, we camped for 50 cents a night. We also went to the Rock of Gibraltar. When in Spain, just like Germany, houses and barns were built together. There are no farm buildings in the countryside like in the U.S. I had my appendix taken out in a German hospital by a German doctor. The military hospital was 150 miles away. I went to a German doctor again to find out if I was pregnant. I took a German girl with me. We ended up going back to the States 6 months early to Battle Creek, Michigan, just 2 hours from home. I would have the babe in Germany. I would have had the babe in Germany. It would have been in German hospital. When the babe gets older, she could decide to live in Germany or America. I'm glad they sent us home early. Something must have been on my side. And that was when Julie was born. We were sent back to the States in September of '62 to Battle Creek, Michigan. We were only 2 hours from home, so we came home often. We were married 9 years before I got pregnant. My brothers and sisters would come to stay with us for a week or two at a time. When my baby was 1 year old, we went to work in Woolworth. Back then, they had a restaurant in the store. In '64, Dick went back to Korea for a year. I went back home to Nay. I got a job at a steakhouse for $1 an hour. Wow. I was working in the afternoon by myself. When Bryan High School would have a game, everyone would come in to eat. The boss forgot about that night. The place filled up. I got the customers, did the grill, did the bar. When the boss came in, the place was full. He said I was 1 in a million. When he came back from Korea, we were stationed at Rapid City, South Dakota. Nice place to be. There was Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills. We went through there quite a few times. We were there a year and a half. During our time there, we lived in a trailer park. The park was a very low area. We had a blizzard and the snow was covering the trailers. People had to dig each other out. People were melting snow in the bathtubs. Neighborhood kids had a ball sliding from the top of the trailer. We were there for a year and a half, then went to Guam. He said he was getting out when he came back. He had been in the Air Force 14 years. While in Guam, he opened a plane full of dead bodies. That's when he knew for sure he was done. He came home to Nay. I got a job in a factory. I worked the steakhouse 4 to 11 and the factory 12 to 8. Sometimes I made $40 in tips a night before I went to the factory. I had this guy give me $5 before I waited on him because he liked me. In '64, jobs were hard to get. Dick would get laid off all the time or temporary service. When Dick got out of service, he worked at General Motors. He was a grinder, but always getting stuff in his eyes, so he quit and went to work at Marathon as a mechanic. Back then, gas stations had a place for you to get your car fixed. I don't remember why he left there. He went to Defiance Stamping and got laid off. Went to Trim Trend, got laid off. Went to Zealers, got laid off. Went to Challenge, worked there for 7 years. They shut the doors for when he was 55 years old. Went to Edgerton Forge. I was still at Plastech. In September 67, my press made a double shot. One went into my hand. I was 6.5 months pregnant. Luckily, the parts were little back then. When they put me in the ambulance to Fort Wayne, Indiana, they said to be sure to tell the doctor 600 degrees and low pressure. They tried to take a skin graft, but it would not take too much heat. So they sent me home to have the baby. My hand was still an open sore. The doctor did not realize that I had lost muscle tone laying around, so they had trouble with the baby. The doctor sat with him for 3 days before he decided to live. That's when he was 6 weeks old. They sewed my hand into my stomach. It was like that for 21 days with a new baby. So my 4-year-old daughter had to take care of him most of the time. The only good thing about it was that I stayed home for 2 years. I could be with the kids. I guess there is a purpose for everything. When I was off, the company sent me money, which was really nice of them. So we got to take the kids on a little trip. We went to Put in Bay, SeaWorld in Ohio. SeaWorld is not there anymore. We went to Deer Park where the kids could play with the deer. I went back to work in 1969. They put me in finishing. They thought I would be afraid to run a press. I stayed in finishing from 1969 to 1971. Then I went back to molding on third shift. I worked third shift for 24 years with a lot of overtime. Sometimes I worked 80 to 90 hours in a week. I would work 16 hours in a day and then go square dancing. In 1972, we bought a 1972 Chevy truck with a camper. We went to Cheyenne Radio, Yellowstone, Custer State Park. We took our niece along. We went to the Tetons. It was the first time I saw Old Faithful. We had a 4-year-old boy and a 5-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl and a 12-year-old niece. They rode up above. The truck camper was a bed that fits above the cab. Well, guess what they did? They kicked the window out of the camper. So we had to get a new window on a Sunday in a rainstorm. I rode back there with them. I don't know how the camper stayed on the truck with all the horsing around they did. That is why I worked so much overtime as possible, so we could go on trips. I had top seniority, so if only one press ran, I worked. I could do my own job, set up, and fix the matrix. One time only one press ran. Me and the foreman were the only ones there, so something went wrong in the press that I could not fix. I called for the foreman. Guess what? He wasn't there. I went to the lunchroom and waited for him to come back. One time they put a part in the press that had to be picked out with a crowbar. There were men walking around the floor, but I had to do the job. After a while, the foreman came back and asked what was wrong with me. I said, "I'm pissed off." He said, "Better to be pissed off than pissed on." Another time, the foreman and I were working on a press. I did something he didn't like. He said, "Way to go, butthead, but I'm a big girl. I can take whatever they throw at me." In 73, we went out west. In 74, we had a Class C motorhome. I loved it. We had a lot of fun in it. We just went around to different things in Ohio and Indiana. Went to a couple more deer parks. Kids like playing with the deer. In 75, we went back out west. In 76, we went to Disney World. It was the first year it was open. We had friends in Florida then. We visited them while there. In 77, we went to the East Coast. In 78, we took the Polar Bear Express to Moosonee, Canada. Back then, I could foresee something was going to happen. The day my brother went to the field, I knew he was going to get hurt. He got his hand caught in a corn picker. Another time, we were staying at the lake. I told my husband, "You got to get down to the moose. You're going to win tonight." So we left the kids with the neighbors. Sure enough, we won. 2 other times, we were going places, and I knew we would have a flat time. Both times that happened. That is kind of scary. I won at the Eagles 2 times. One time I knew I was going to happen. We stayed at the lake on most weekends when I wasn't working. or we stayed there and I would go to work from there. My friends moved to Colorado, so in '84 we took 5 boys in a Pam top on a pickup. We visited her. We also visited Yellowstone and Custer State Park. We went to Mount Rushmore and then headed to Bear County, a drive-through animal park. It was about a 30-minute drive. We stopped to get gas along the way. We entered the gate and said 2 adults and 5 boys in the back. The attendant said there wasn't anyone in the back, while my husband was getting gas in Kingston. They got out and we never saw them. So we had left them. We had to go back and look for them. They had been scrounging up money to figure out how they were going to get home. Mind you, they were young teenagers. My dad died May 1st, 1984. My uncle died on May 3rd. In '85, we just spent our vacation at a local campground. My granddaughter Jennifer was born in November. In '86, we went back to Disney World. We took my niece Susie, nephew Bimbo, and a friend Steve of my daughters. A friend Liddy from work went with her daughter Betty and grandkids. We both had Class C mini homes. We had a good time. One of the girls we used to work with moved to Cape Coral, so we visited her. In '87, we went to the Canadian Rockies, most beautiful place I've ever been. There are glaciers, wildlife, and beautiful streams. I worked 3rd shift and took care of my granddaughter. My daughter went to college on Tuesdays and Thursdays, then she worked. I didn't get much sleep, if any. Everybody at work said I would never make it, but I'm still here. Tough old bird. In '88, we went to the East Coast. We took our good friends Richard and Sue and their grandson. We went to Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. In '89, we went to Florida twice. In the summer, we took my niece Sarah. At Christmas, we took my daughter-in-law Sherry. We stayed at our mom's house. We went to Disney World every year for 9 to 13 years at Christmas. The factory would shut down over Christmas, so we would just go. In 1990, Canadian Rockies again. In 1991, back out west. We always go to Yellowstone when we go that direction. In '92, back to the Canadian Rockies. We went with Liddy and Betty again. We stopped in South Dakota to see her daughter. In '93, back out west. We visited my friend in Colorado. Then we went back to the Rockies again in '94 and '95. We keep going back to places I love. We always come home, though, through Yellowstone. In '96, we took 6 weeks off and went to Alaska. Took my friend and my granddaughter. We took a conversion van. The trip was 11,300 miles with gas of $1,650. Food and lodging. We only stayed in a motel once. Then once again, we stopped in South Dakota to see her daughter. In 1977, we went to Texas. We planned to spend the winters there. My husband had a friend that camped in Dona, so that it was where we went. Took 6 weeks off and went there. I was going to return in '98, but my husband made me go to the doctor. I haven't been to a doctor for 30 years. I went to have my thyroid checked. Doctor found a heart problem. I was sent to a specialist. Had to have a triple bypass and valve replacement. He said it had been coming on for 10 years. How's that possible? I worked so many hours overtime in those 10 years. I was in surgery for 7 hours. We stayed with my daughter till the doctor said it was okay to travel. We took off after the okay. We went to Florida for a month, visited friends and family, then headed to Texas until May. We went to Mexico about once a week. It was so neat over there. Then in '99, we stayed at the lake for the summer, in Texas in the winter. Cheap living, $350 at the campground, and at the lake, $450 for a season in Texas. In 2000, we stayed at the lake in the summer. I used to walk 5 miles a day. They say crows are smart birds. Every day at the same time, I walked the same route. Those crows knew I was down there, as they were talking as I walked. My baby brother calls me the old crow. That means I must be a smart bird. Ha ha. I could not handle sitting around and walking and doing nothing, so in September 2000, I went to work at McDonald's. I was an opener and ran the griddle. I did that until April 2017 and had conjunctive heart failure. They wanted me to come back after as well, but I couldn't move as fast as before. I did not want to make a fool of myself. Going back in time, my husband was done traveling, but I was not. I learned to drive the big roads myself with kids. In 2000, we went to Disney World with 3 boys and 3 girls. In 2001, I took 7 kids north, crossed the Mackinac Bridge, went to the sand dunes in Frankfurt Piers, took sand dune buggy ride. In 2002, took 6 kids to Disney. No one ever gave me any money, except my sister and her daughter-in-law as I took their child. So I picked up cans to take them. People see me pick up cans and wonder what I was doing. I told them I was taking 6 kids to Disney World. They told me where they lived and would then save some cans for me. The guys that weighed the cans would add a few pounds each time. I made $3,000 to take those kids down there. In 2003, went out west with 2 girls and 1 boy. We always went to Yellowstone and Custer State Park. In 2004, the granddaughter graduated. Her and her friend went to California to live. In the summer, Dick and I went to visit her. We took the neighbor girls and boy. The boy was messing around on a skateboard and fell. I had to put him in the hospital in San Diego. I always had the kid's insurance card with me just in case something happened, thank goodness. Jennifer lived in a camper on the street beside SeaWorld. At night they would park in an alley and sleep. In 2005, she sold the camper and moved to San Antonio, Texas. She called and wanted us to come and help her drive home. We went down and back. I must have had a day off of work. When I went back, I said I'd just been to San Antonio and back. She stayed home for a few months and went back to California. This time she worked on and met another couple that ended up living with them. She also met a Marine. They all lived together. I took the girls to California in June. In August, my husband went with us. We went to Lake Isabella since my granddaughter had friends there. We left Fremont at 5 p.m. on a 6-lane highway. Lake Isabella is at the bottom of a canyon. Got there at 1 a.m., had to go through the back roads. I don't know how I did all that. In 2006, the van broke late at night in Wisconsin. We rented a van and went to Yellowstone and St. Paul, Minnesota to visit family. The garage called saying the van was ready. We picked it up and went to California to visit friends and went through Yosemite National Park. We went to Oregon, Crater Lake, and on down the coast of California. In 2007, I took 5 kids up to the bridge. We camped the other side of the bridge. We went to the sand dunes and rode a dune buggy ride. 2008, took a friend to Vegas. After we left Vegas, our headlights went out. 2009, Dick passed away. My great-granddaughter Peyton was born in 2010. Disney at Christmas in 2011. 2012, visited friends in Alabama at Easter. 2013, went to Alabama for Thanksgiving. 2014, went to Disney. If a child goes to Disney for their birthday, they're treated very special. Peyton was dressed up as Tinkerbell. 2015, 2016, nothing. 2017, back to California. 4 ladies in a Camry. Me, daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter. Visited friends at Lake Isabella. Went to Disneyland, Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, and all. 2018, nothing. 2019, went to Smoky Mountains and Chakotay Island. 2020, second great-granddaughter was born, Ayla. 2021 to 22, nothing. I suppose my traveling days are over because I can't drive anymore. Someday I would like to take the girls to walk across the Rio Grande and to the H to watch them catch salmon. Ayla is too young yet, though. I don't know if I will live long enough to do that. I've had cancer, 2 surgeries, two cancer surgeries and a bleeding ulcer. Doctors say I'm in amazing shape for my age. Cancer over right now. I've had a good life. I thank God I can remember all this stuff. That's it. Oh my goodness. goodness, what a story, huh? Oh, nobody cares. Let's see if we can play the guitar. I'll wait for the phone to ring. Yeah, I got my truck in the shop. And it's getting welded up and worked on. It's going to be about $350. But, truck will work. Oh, yeah. Oh, I just love to play. Anyway, that's enough of the crazy old Zack Storytime show for today. Oh, I gotta go tighten up the jib sheet and check the charts. That's right. Peace, love, you know who cares. Be original. Be the change.